Welcome again to Faz Radio Politics, my friend. Looks like Zorro's taken the week off, or he might arrive later. We don't know. However, we have Mr. Titan here, and we have myself talking about what is intended to be a provocative issue. But I think that the goal here is to be nice about it and really find out what people are thinking about this. Mr. Titan here represents the non-Faz view. Faz here.
Big shock there.
Faz here represents the Faz view. Yeah, let's start. How's it been going, Mr. Titan?
Fantastic. Good weekend. Got a lot done. I solved my computer problems by getting rid of Windows. And then like a dummy, I didn't have my cam link plugged fully into the USB, so I had some technical glitches getting the camera to work today. But other than that, fantastic.
Well, other than that, you also found a way to mute me, or at least clean up my speech, my foul language.
Yes, you are a potty mouth. We know that from all the years. And creating the shorts, there's now a button I can push to auto filter your potty mouth.
Which I'm sure that a lot of people will appreciate. I don't know. I call them colorful metaphors. I think they work.
That particular clip was hysterical because there was like 4 big ones in there, and it made me laugh. It didn't get the MF one. I had to train it to go get that one. Yeah.
Did you have to say it or like just point to something?
No, I had to click the word and then add it to the censored list. And anytime it sees it in there, it'll pull it out now.
Well, you could do that with political opinions as well. You could say, what I'd really like to say about this is beep.
That's right. I've got full censorship ability now.
There you go. Well, again, my goal is to be able to hit what is going to be controversial topics, but in a way that actually people can say what they think in a safe space, in a respectful space. Even, well, a lot of people don't like to respect each other over significantly diverging opinions.
Yeah, well, yes, because everybody has very strong opinions on these contentious items that you like to bring up. And unfortunately for the people listening here, we know that Titan doesn't have a filter. So you're going to get the raw deal, straight as it gets.
No beeping?
No. So I've given up years ago, 5-6 years ago. I've given up on being able to stop my opinion from being heard. If you ask my opinion, you're going to hear it. And you might like it, you might not like it, but either way, if you don't want to hear my opinion, don't ask the question.
Well, I want to hear the opinion, but I will say that I'm really big on consistency. I feel I've noticed that a lot of people have opinions that tend not to be the most consistent. It's like, okay, well, if you would have it for this, why don't you have it for that? And that's where the beefs are. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's very obvious. I see it all the time on X platform. People will do it for both sides of the aisle, Republican or Democrat. And you'll have somebody who, during their favorite administration, admonished somebody for something, but then changed their mind nowadays, now that the opponent is in there. And it's cataloged because it's in writing there. It's a little harder to do with media like this. You have to go and collect those things, and that takes a little bit more effort.
Well, it's kind of funny because if you listen to your favorite politician, whoever that person might be, it's funny how they can say exactly the opposite 4 years later, and everything's okay. And then they switch back, and everything's okay. Doesn't seem to work all the time with non-politicians. Like me or you, we can hold each other to things, but I think it also depends upon a person's personal humility as well.
Well, and you and I have argued in the past because I love I love the fact that I can change my mind over time, and it's much more difficult for you to change your mind on things, as we've pointed out in the past. I value having that open mind, and I'm open to listen to just about anything from anybody. And I've noted on this cast, you changed my life dramatically with the Zeitgeist that you shared back in 2006. And that literally turned my life 180 degrees a different direction. And I was pretty dug in. But if things make sense, I'm willing to change my opinion on things. Politicians, on the other hand, tend to deny that. Oh, I never said that. Oh no, that's not what it meant. And that's completely different. I'm fully willing to admit when I change my mind on something, and I'll even tell you why. I don't know.
Well, I think another problem becomes, and you just said it right there. You specifically said, I haven't changed my mind on things, and there's a bit of scorekeeping when you make claims like that. Scorekeeping that's required. Now, I would think that I haven't because it's just core observations and beliefs. I will change my mind about anything that has reproducible evidence. But then, see, that's the thing is how much scorekeeping do we need to keep about people? And so that's something I don't want to do on this show because it just makes people defensive. I could if I start scorekeeping on you, it'd make you defensive. And I want to hear the actual reasons why people believe it, even if they get contradicted later. And including me, even if I contradict myself later, I think it's important for you to understand why I said something. This seems to be a new thing because Facebook recently has just dropped their moderation their moderation team. And X, I believe, did that as well. In fact, what I like about X is they have a little blurb on there that says some readers have a problem with this. What does the community think? And I think that really depends upon the wisdom of the mob, which I actually have a lot of regard for.
Well, that can be altered as well, though, because you can use the algorithm to push it to the right people that are going to community note it in a certain way. So there's it's not completely as open as you might think it is. And I think that Zuckerberg, the only reason he did that was because of the success that X has had with it. And Facebook and Instagram and their threads and everything else isn't doing very well anymore. And so he's got to be able to turn that company around. And so he's trying to emulate as much of X as he possibly can. That's the only one that's seen an increase lately.
Well, Facebook, I think, has had some challenges over the years, and they're trying to stay relevant and interesting. Anyway, let's get going on this. So, Donald Trump, on his first day in office, did a lot of executive orders, and these are, I think he wants to keep promises for a number of things he said on the campaign trail. This one in particular. And maybe I should actually put this in chat. I'm going to. Where's the public chat here? Comments, I guess, right there. Defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. So the name there means quite a lot. Biological truth. And it seems to be the whole concept of this seems to be around transgender people. Basically, if people seem to be having a problem, people who have elected Trump and Trump himself seems to have a problem with if you are a man, if you were, well, according to their definition, if you are conceived as a man, that you should tell people that you're a man until the day you die, because we all know that your genes can't be changed. I have a little bit of a problem with the word conceived because when you're conceived, everyone's a woman. that would make Trump the first woman president. But I think that the meaning there is if you come out as with an XY chromosome, well, it's not said in there exactly, but I assume that they're saying if you come out with XY chromosome that you're considered a man, and you should keep up that for the rest of your life. And same with XX chromosome, you should be called a woman no matter what for the rest of your life. Before we get in too deep, do you have any opinions yet, or do I need to dig deeper?
No. So that's the lottery system, right? And I think that the reason he put it at conception versus birth is because it can be manually changed at birth, and anything can be put on a birth certificate.
And your birth certificate can be changed later too.
Right. So I think that's why he did it. And for someone who just not even 5 minutes ago, talked about you're going to believe anything that is scientifically reproducible, XX and XY are scientifically reproducible if you're tested. So
Yeah.
that's that.
So I agree with that.
Right.
XX and XY definitely mean, in a scientific way, men and women. The problem here, well, there's, I don't want to get too far, but I want to answer that. The first part is they've changed it to upon conception, which is a problem because that's hard to monitor. And I frankly, I'd be afraid of any way of monitoring that. I think that's going to be a problem with the executive order. I think the language is going to be hard. I think there's going to be a problem legally with that language. The second part is, yeah, I agree with XX means woman, girl, XY means man. However, this seems to be this whole issue seems to be more of a deeper issue than just men and women. We're dealing with a society of people that live and work together. We're dealing with humans that we're all not doing what we were designed to do. We're all designed to be cavemen living on the plains hunting animals, and here we are sitting at desks with microphones in front of us, and we get all sorts of diseases because we're not doing things according to how our body does things. But also there's parts of it's becoming obvious that not all parts of our body seem to be on board with this social idea. Because right now, if you're a woman, you look and act and you think a certain way. And if you're a man, you act and look and think a certain way. And there's so many other areas of our life that we've pushed a lot of definitions, and there's some room to say that a social definition plays a part here. However, I get the sense that a lot of people don't like that idea of a social definition of someone's gender being different than the actual sex. Why would it matter? So this is my first question to you. Okay, we're in agreement so far, but why would it matter if you're a man or a woman for any government program?
There's a lot of reasons, actually, because of the predisposition that you mentioned earlier. First of all, there's a different set of skills that women possess that men don't have. Women are designed to be fantastic multitaskers because of the childbearing that they do. Men are designed to be very decisive, to be able to push forward the hunter-gatherer mentality. So if you're hiring for a specific role, let's say the military, and while a female can be very, very strong, she can have endurance, still can't perform to the same level that a male can. And if you go into battle, there's a problem because those rucksacks aren't going to be any lighter. The endurance isn't going to be there. And if also you're searching for those things such as the multitasking or anything similar to that, that could be a problem.
Okay. So, yeah, I agree with some of that, but there's crossover. For example, there's plenty of women who are stronger than some men. Now, if you take the you can certainly find women that are stronger than some men. I'm sure that there's some women stronger than me. I haven't worked out a lot, but I'm sure I can get beat up, outlifted, outran, out everything by some women out there. But I was in the military as a man, and let's just say I was a Marine because I would be able to be a Marine. Why couldn't a woman who performs as well as me, or even better, be a Marine?
They do have female Marines.
Well, right now, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a big deal in the past. Women couldn't do that. So you're cool with that, with women doing combat roles in the military, for example.
Certain
because you were just talking about combat roles.
Mm-hmm. Certain combat roles, I can see them succeeding fantastically, and sure.
Okay, so the same ones that I would be doing, you think, if she was stronger and faster and whatever than me?
No, well, that's very, 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 very subjective, right? So can they keep up or do as well, if not better, as a pilot? Sure, I think so. Can they do the same or better in a battalion on the ground in a tank war? I don't think so. Are they able to do special forces? They've tried, and it's failed miserably. So they've given them opportunities to take on some significant combat roles, and it hasn't ended well. If, though, women want to claim equal rights, then they should be part of the draft then as well. And if they get smoked, they get smoked. But the problem is that it endangers the others, typically the men, who are around them. So that could lead to a significant handicap when you're in actual combat. So
Okay,
there's a certain line that you do have to draw, I believe.
First of all, can you hear me typing at all?
Constantly.
Oh, bummer. Okay, so this microphone doesn't work as well as you said it did. Okay, so I'll make sure it's muted when I'm typing. I was taking notes. All right, did I interrupt you? Do you have anything more to say?
Mm-mm.
All right. So I think there is some debate over men just being the hunter-gatherer and women taking care of women of children. For example, farming. There's a lot of men who are very good at farming. There's a lot of men who are very good at architecture. The men are very good with math. It turns out there is women too. I think this is a totally separate subject to get into really deep. But I think things get complicated when we start saying men can do some things and women can do some things because we start getting into gender roles.
It's a fact.
Okay. Certain things.
Right.
Yes.
Not everything. No.
Okay. So I just told you it's a fact, I'm sure you can agree. It's a fact that there's some women stronger than me and faster than me.
Well, of course.
Okay. What would keep that woman from being on a SEAL team? What would stop a woman like that from being on a SEAL team, but allow me to be on the SEAL team?
The pass or fail of buds.
Well, there's also something I think we're missing is society's role in this. How we treat each other. There's a reason we have a men's room and a women's room. Now, before, it's kind of funny. Before, about 100 years ago or so, there was just an outhouse, and everybody went into the outhouse. And usually, there's one, so it wasn't really a problem. You didn't have to see an outhouse with 27 seats in it. But at a certain point, when we got indoor plumbing, we started having men's room and women's rooms, and ladies' rooms. Why is that?
Well, it's in public, usually not in a household.
Yeah, but well, ideally here it's because there's multiple stalls in there, and you don't want the men and women to mix. And back in Victorian times, when this stuff came about, everybody was very uptight. They didn't want women and men to mix. Why can't they mix now?
I don't see a reason why not, other than the claims of perverted people. And as we're finding out lately, the women are just as guilty as the men in a lot of cases.
So says millennia, Old Man Smithers says millennia ago they had men's and women's restrooms in Rome. This isn't new. My understanding is they also had men and women's bathhouses as well. Probably what I was going toward is probably because men and women don't seem to play well together in compromising situations where they take their clothes off.
Well, and that is part of society's fault, that I think they've taken and made anything sexual such a taboo that it does push on those buttons. If it was normalized that everybody just walked around naked, I don't think there'd be half the problems that there is now.
Well, the people in uncontacted tribes in South America were doing that for a long time. They were naked all the time, and it took missionaries to come contact them to reveal to them their nakedness, kind of like in Adam and Eve, their nakedness was revealed by the serpent.
Yeah, that again is a whole nother show in itself.
It is. So I'm driving to a point. I'm not asking random questions. And so, okay, so if men and women can't seem to deal well in public restrooms, it'd make total sense why some people want to stop. This seems to be a very heavy on the gender issue, where people want to stop somebody from changing their gender on paperwork and then be able to walk into that other restroom. And I find it interesting because it seems like we actually might agree on this area that it shouldn't matter what gender you were, what sex you were, how you look, to be able to use a bathroom, a public bathroom.
No, and I see how you tried to sneak that in there about how you look.
Sneak.
Look at the look on your face. You tried to sneak it in there.
And I'm smiling because you're smiling because you think you got something over on me, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure you do.
No, you wanted me to agree that how you look is what's important, not what you are.
I'm looking to get a common ground first before I really dig into this executive order, because I think it's there to address a problem, and I'm trying to narrow down on the problem. And that problem is we think that men and women should be treated differently.
They should be.
Why?
The look on your face, it's totally blank.
Why should you treat another?
They're almost like a different species. Almost. Men and women are inherently different, and there's two reasons for that. One is the natural selection that I've already talked about how you are programmed to be women on the emotional side, men not so emotional. The multitasking for women because they bear children, and the ability of men to focus on a single task, like taking down the brontosaurus so they can get their brontosaurus steaks. There's inherent differences between men and women. Society, throughout the ages, have put them into roles, yes. Traditionally speaking, back from 1930, 40, 50, the woman was running the household because the children were there, and they were responsible for shopping and cooking, and the men went out and made money. So it is almost equally as important to look at the natural biological genetic things that separate men and women But there's also, again, that societal piece that plays a big part of it as well.
I'm not sure that I would say that women are more emotional, and men not so. I would strongly assert that society has allowed women to express their emotions in some ways and men to express their emotions in different ways. Because I know a lot of emotional men. They don't cry openly and relieve their anger that way. They go and punch you in the face. They link it to violence, or they link it to putting another person down or something like that. Women will do that too, but they also have an additional avenue that they're allowed in the society to cry. Men can cry, by the way. We're allowed to cry in certain circumstances. If our buddy during a battle dies, we can also slap each other on the ass. If you're a baseball player, can't do it any other time. That's wrong. So I think that reasons like that, women are more emotional and men not so, I think might be part of a problem when talking about Trump's executive order.
You lost me.
Society has a heavy effect on how women and men express their emotions. I would like to propose that men and women have the same type of emotions. It's just society has them express it differently.
I don't think it's heavy. I think, and I talked about it just a minute ago. I think it does exist, yes, but I don't think it's heavy. No.
So some things that are different between men and women are men have higher muscle mass and strength. Women tend to excel in ultra endurance activities due to better fat metabolism. Yeah, I asked ChatGPT. I'm trying to show the fact difference between the two. Bone structure and density. Men tend to have denser and larger bones. Women, of course, are designed for popping babies out, so they have a wider pelvis. They tend to be more flexible. Not to say that men can't be flexible. In fact, the Olympics started with just men, and you're finding that a lot of men there could be quite flexible. My 2 cents on the so there's a number of things, but pain tolerance. Women have much higher pain tolerance than men. That's well documented. It says that women are prone to certain injuries more, such as ACL tears. So there's some physical differences, but they seem pretty close. And again, I don't see why a woman can't do exactly what I would do in the military.
For the reasons you just talked about, the same reason that they separate men and women's sports. If you put a team of basketball players, professional basketball players, men's team versus women's team, their bodies are not designed to do those types of activities, which is similar to the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Prone, just like you said, prone to ACL tears. Their muscles.
Are humans designed? Okay, are humans designed to fly jet fighters?
No, of course not.
Okay, are we designed to shoot guns?
We're not designed to, no, but we can.
Okay.
Men and women can shoot guns just fine.
Right. Okay. So there's a number of things that we do right now that women can do just as easily as men. And I'm trying to get to think tanks thing. He says training together just adds distraction. And we all remember being able to stay awake and training and staying focused. It's a natural problem training men and women together. To me, that's partly due to our bodies being, we're sexually attracted to women. But it's a very societal thing. Society, the way that we were raised makes it so that we can't train with women. But I'm going to suggest that the way that we were raised also says that you can't train with certain men. If a men think or act a certain way, you will not be able to train with them.
There's social hierarchies within men and social hierarchies within the women as well. So
in the military,
anywhere.
And no, I was going to say, and the military seeks to remove those social hierarchies.
To a point. they need natural born killers, right? They need that hunt, that hunger. They have to uncover it, and that's a big reason why they break you down to nothing in boot camp. It's to get that primal feature that you have in your life activated, and they want to find out who's going to be the ones who are going to perform and who are the ones that don't, because the ones who don't get the ones who do killed. And that circles right back to the men versus women thing that we were talking about. So there's certain men that'll get you killed out in the field as well. So you do have to weed those out. That's why women can't do certain combat roles.
I actually do agree with Think Tank here, saying that training adds distraction. You can't just stick women on a SEAL team right now due to the culture. You'd have to start over with the culture somehow. And I think that's actually easy to do by just starting a new set of training requirements. But everybody that's part of the process has to want to. So I want to circle back to this executive order, because the whole purpose of this executive order is to say that a man is not allowed to change his gender marker to woman, to female. Female, not allowed to change it to men. It should be what it was when you were born. Unfortunately, there is the way that this thing is written, it's left out intersex people. There are people who they don't have X chromosomes and they don't have XY chromosomes. They might have a single X, or they might have XXY, in which case they don't fit as a man or a woman. And usually it happens to be that the human body, when it forms in the womb, all humans start out as a woman, and then you differentiate according to your genes. An X will fail to differentiate into a man, and an XXY will fail in all sorts of ways. So they're not going to fit. So I think this executive order is written a bit badly, and I think that's going to cause it some problems. But number two is the reasoning it gives, I feel is a bit unfortunate. Defending women from gender ideology extremism. That's and restoring biological truth to federal government. If biological truth was restored to the federal government, wouldn't that apply to vaccines as well?
In what way?
Biological truth according to how one's biology reacts to a vaccine.
That's a really big rabbit hole. You know that, right?
Well, I'm trying to get. I have a feeling that the rabbit hole might involve something about somebody's lying somewhere.
No, the rabbit hole is in, depending on what your genetic makeup is and where you're from, things even like vaccines are going to affect you completely differently. And your background and where you come from has a lot to do, like with diet, right? So some people can do well on carnivore where others can't. Some do good on a vegan, others can't. That's because of your biological makeup and where your body, where your genes came from in the world. So the same applies with a vaccine, and the same applies for the bugs that they say cause the illnesses that they do, because they could originate in different places, and you're always vaccinating behind the current one, hoping that the new one is going to be similar enough to the old one that it'll at least weaken it. That's what science tries to put out. And so there's a lot of things at play. I don't think that vaccines and gender are at all related.
Well, vaccines and sex. No, what I was talking about, what was related, was the phrase restoring biological truth to the federal government. So I think if you're going to make a rule or an order or something like that, that you need to be consistent. And of course, it's okay. The Trump administration in the first in his first administration was actually on par with biological truth regarding vaccines. It was just Trump himself that didn't agree with vaccines, despite having the vaccine himself. So yeah, I'm glad that the government at that time did. Now, this new government, the Trump government, purports to do something quite different. But the first part of this, defending women from gender ideology extremism, that seems to me to be a label. And again, remember, all this executive order is about changing officially one's gender, not sex. There's a difference between gender and sex. They've also said here that they do not recognize gender and sex as being different. So if we're talking about gender ideology extremism, this seems to be a very socially related executive order, not about science as much as social. When you talk about ideology extremism,
It seems to address both by putting those two together and saying this is how we're going to define these things. Look, going back to your vaccine thing, they changed the definition of vaccine during the pandemic. That was front and center on almost every major media outlet. So it was okay to change definitions then, but it's not okay to change them now.
Sorry, I was reading Old Man Smithers' thing. Change the definition. Okay, so science is an evolving thing. As you learn more, you add it to your tool set. Since we had never had a pandemic like COVID, we had to learn about how to solve the problem. Well, we did have a flu pandemic in 1918, but we didn't respond to it the same way. I don't think we had a vaccine for the flu at the time. However, that became an impetus for having vaccines, and we have a flu shot every year because of it. How useful is this flu shot? It varies according to what you were saying, and your mileage may vary upon whichever one you get. But I want to pull back a little bit because I don't want to argue certain things that you brought up. I want to stay on the subject here. Mr. Smithers says, I believe the protection part is primarily aimed at women's sports. Now, I had this idea, and I might have heard, I'm sure I've heard this has been said somewhere. I had this idea that I'm sure I heard somewhere, which is, why do we need to have women and men's categories in sports? Because if our bodies are so different, including between different men's, you have, if you talk about boxing, you have the featherweight boxing, heavyweight boxing, welterweight boxing, whatever. You want to put people in the right categories. Why not just stratify people according to their abilities? And then you get you get some real competition in these sports. There might be, there might be some women that can do really, really well or better in sports against men. I think what I had read about ChatGPT, about them having higher endurance, and you had said some other things. Women might do better than men in those sports, and they would be the true best person to win that title. Why not get rid of the whole notion of sex and gender in sports and just have people compete according to their ability?
They can, but unfortunately, I don't think very many women would make the cut.
Well, the cut for heavyweight, featherweight, welterweight.
The cut for whatever team is being assembled, because you want to grab the best people you possibly can to put on the competition field. If you're talking an individual sport like boxing, if you put a welterweight woman in with a welterweight man, 9.8 times out of 10, it's going to be a very unfair fight still.
Okay, so that's according to the definitions. I have a feeling that the welterweight man and welterweight women's definitions are a bit different. I'm talking about punching power, strength, agility. If you have, and I'm thinking D&D things here, because you have a strength of 20, you have a punching ability of 30, and it shouldn't matter what you are. If you perform consistently at a certain level, wouldn't it be more fair if you were put up against people that met your abilities?
If that can be found, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't think you're going to find very many women who can compete at the same level with those metrics with men.
I would blame that. Personally, I would blame that on society, because society has separated women from men. There are more men that do all sorts of things than women. There are more men computer programmers than women. Are women really that dumb? There's more men that join the military. Are women really that sheltered? I really think that if you had a society that encouraged everybody to do things, and you had 50% men, 50% women, you'd find a lot more women doing those things that men did. But we treat them way different.
Sometimes. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah. So that's what I'm getting to as why you'd need an executive order that would even care about whether someone's a male or a female, and trying to resolve that. I propose that it's ultimately a social issue that the president is trying to solve.
It might be.
If that's the case, if this is I got here a lot quicker than I was expecting. Should the president be defining what social issues are okay in the United States?
What social issues are okay in the United States?
Yeah.
So there's no law that's discriminating against men or women with this executive order.
We actually have to have laws to keep people from discriminating against men and women. That's a sad thing.
Right, but that's not what this is. There's no law that's saying anything that already isn't true. You have men, you have women. He's saying that's it. There's men and there's women, and we're not going to recognize anything other than male and female. That's all they're saying.
So you think it is ultimately, that executive order is ultimately about just truth and not anything else?
I wasn't there when he came up with his idea. I wasn't there when he wrote it. I don't know what his intentions are with it. What I'm saying is that it doesn't hurt anybody by putting this executive order out saying gender and sex are the same, and here's what a man is and here's what a woman is. It doesn't hurt anybody.
So the executive order appears to present itself as an effort for biological truth, but there seems to be a lot of subjectiveness to it. It's written in such a way, just the title alone is written in such a way to call it extremism.
Because it has gone to an extreme level. And I don't remember exactly. I know Golden Hawk will come back and slap me in the head with it later. So I'm going to guess. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to guess. I think I saw 9 different genders on federal applications. And he's saying, we're not doing that anymore. There's going to be 2. You're a man or you're a woman. And you have to put the one that you were given in the wonderful life lottery at conception. That's it.
But why does this matter?
I wasn't there. I don't know.
No. Okay, do you agree with this order, first of all?
I don't do politics.
Okay.
Look.
Okay.
So let me answer it. Let me answer it this way. it is not hurting or discriminating against anybody by making those definitions. It is not making anything illegal. So I'm going to say I'm not upset about it. That's as far as I can go on that. I mean, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. I don't understand why it would affect or make somebody else upset.
Would you agree that it's a deliberate attempt to influence how society views and organizes itself?
That's a slippery slope right there. I think I'm going to answer it this way. That should be something that you should be applauding, you yourself, because you're always jumping up and down and screaming about how you want a standard. So there you go. You've got your standard now.
So the problem with that standard is it is deliberately vague. I love standards. Hold on. I love standards. But a standard has to agree with itself.
And how doesn't it?
It's vague.
It's not vague. It says you're a man or you're a woman. And we're defining that as
okay.
At conception.
Okay, it misses intersex. What do those people have rights now?
It's not affecting anybody's rights at all. They were assigned something at birth when it went on their birth certificate. They were given one or the other. Then in that case, which is, by the way, you're making it sound like there's 100 million Americans that are intersex, and this is a huge problem for so many people. It's not. It's like 1/1,000,000th of 1% of the people out there that got the lottery pick to be intersex. So at that point, I'm sure it's listed on their birth certificate what was, and I hate using the term assigned, but what the doctor put when that child was born. And that's what you run with.
Do men and women have the same rights in the United States?
Yes.
Why was there a push for the Equal Rights Amendment in the 70s?
They have equal rights. The application of those has been skewed over the years, yes. But they do have the same rights.
Despite having different physiologies, for example, men can't have babies. A woman, if knocked up by a man, is not allowed, according to now federal rules, to terminate that pregnancy.
That's not true at all.
Help me here. Tell me where it is, where it's not true.
It was given back to the states to decide whether or not that state would support abortion or be against abortion. Some states are for abortion and allow them to happen. Other states ban it. So it's up to the states. The federal government just said, listen, we're not going to pay for it anymore. That's what they got rid of. They said, we're not going to be involved in this anymore. It's back to the states to determine how they want to handle it. So many people get that wrong. And you just tried to portray it that, oh my God, they can't get abortions. They can. You just got to go and be a resident of the state that supports it. And if you're in a state that doesn't support it, you'll have to move.
Does it mean that the same federal government is not looking for a federal mandate to not have abortions?
Try that again. I didn't follow it.
Is what you said, does that mean that the federal government is not going to look for a federal mandate to stop abortions?
I wouldn't think so, because it was kicked back to the states.
They are.
Right. So the state decides whether or not they support abortion.
They are. There is a strong push in a number of places to get it be made as a federal law, no abortions.
So if the other side was in power right now, if the libs had government or presidency and Congress, it would be going the other direction. So it just depends on who's in office. There'd be a push for 100% abortion.
So I would Well, so abortion is a bit problematic because there are people that believe that abortion is murder, and other people believe that a non-viable human is not an actual human. It's kind of funny. I found something that I posted on our Discord a while ago where Democrats and Republicans were arguing the reverse regarding constructing a building. Democrats were saying if you start the construction of a building, it's a building and should be treated as such and should be, legally treated as such. And Republicans saying, "Why, no, not at all. If you start building a building, it's not a building until it's done." So it's kind of funny how humans fit one part of that and non-humans fit another part of that definition. Just the whole concept of start and ending. I see this executive order actually when it says that a person is denoted as a man or a woman at conception as a way to push personhood at conception too.
What do you mean by personhood?
Well, legally, you're not a person until you're born. You don't have a birth certificate. You have no rights.
Oh, I see what you're saying. To push the pro-life agenda.
Right. And that would become a bit of a problem the moment that you get knocked up. And this could be intentional, unintentional, whatever. You now have another person inside of you that, in essence, is a parasite for a number of months. There's nothing else in our society that allows one person to be a parasite on another. Sorry, that enforces. For example, I might take care of you. You might be sick and I might take care of you. In one sense, you need me to live, but I could just walk away and be like, you know what? I'm not required to do that. There's no law that says I'm required to take care of you. I can get out of that in some way. I'm sure if I accepted responsibility, there's laws saying you accepted this. But if I didn't accept responsibility, there's nothing stopping me from walking away.
Well, as far as I know, humans are the only animal on this planet that the young need that care in the wild.
Oh my God. Whales, dolphins. There's all sorts of animals out there that where the young. Well, where you're talking about after being born,
right?
I mean, kangaroos. you have the baby's a parasite. It cannot leave the little pouch. Okay, so
right,
there's all
it's
sorts
born, you don't have to care for it for 5 years. You teach it things right off the bat, and it goes and hunts. So
any small animal is going to need to be taken care of. You find a baby squirrel on the side of the road. And he's not dead. You're going to have to nurse him back to health and then teach him how to eat and stuff like that. There are all sorts of concepts like that in the animal world. Yeah. We're different in that we take the longest. A baby human takes much longer than any other animal to become a viable adult and fend for itself.
I'm glad you said that. I'm going to circle back to that later.
You do that. So I would like to purport that legally, men and women have the same fundamental rights, but the practice in our society is that we don't give that to them. The way we treat each other, and the way that the way that we think of each other is that women and men are not equal, and the ERA. The Equal Rights Amendments of the 70s might be construed as you must treat them the same according to certain metrics. And Trump's order saying that you must treat them different, or as a basis to treat them different, is another way to affect social hierarchy. And where I'm going with this is I don't see. I've gotten your point of view now. I don't see how the president of the country should even care about social hierarchy. They should care about certain things like national defense and economy and stuff like that, which ideally should not depend upon social mores.
Well, for things like the military, that's really important to be able to have the ability to determine who's fit for service and who's not fit for service. And that does fall into that realm that we already talked about. We don't need to go back over it, about being able to not get other people killed when you're out there. I don't agree with the way that it's been handled the last few years. The military's turned into a joke, I think, because of it. And I don't think we're in a position of strength. I think that creating the standards and defining things tighter in that case is a smart move. And yes, they have equal. Another point that I think we need to make here is that while we all have fundamental human rights, the rights don't guarantee everybody equal treatment. We are different everything, men and women. So there has to be a distinction, there has to be a difference, and there has to be definitions around what's acceptable for one group and what's not acceptable for the other group. And that goes, I do think it goes both ways. I don't think it should be 100% on the men tell the women what the way it's going to be is. But then it has to go. There was a point that I saw in the comments a little bit ago. I think it was Old Man Smithers. Yeah, here it is. Whoops, my mouse went to sleep. Sorry. The Equal Rights Act has been around for a century, but they didn't want to get drafted, so they backed off of it. See, there we go back to picking and choosing again. They want equal rights, but they don't want equal rights. They want rights that they think are appropriate, but they don't want true equal rights, because then it puts them at a distinct disadvantage. And I understand that. I don't think it's fair in some cases to force them into doing things that are going to get them maimed, hurt, killed, or whatever else too. So there has to be a differentiation somewhere.
Well, there's, if you saw my response about this, if men were given the option, they wouldn't want to be drafted either. There's so many people during the Vietnam War that ran off to Canada, that lied and said that they were, that they were sick and injured, or that they couldn't fit the military's definition of fit to be drafted, because you know that when you're drafted, you're very likely to die. That doesn't forgive what they're saying. It means they're arguing their point badly. Why did it take an amendment to the Constitution to get women to vote, when it should be, they think in this day and age, it's self-evident that they should be able to vote?
Well, there was a different set of rules in society back then. And again, because the men were out, they were the ones who were knowledgeable. And the stereotype was the women are experts at raising babies, and they don't know about the national debt, and they don't know about world politics, and they don't know about oil. And so they shouldn't have the ability to vote on the men who will be leading this country for those different things. So there was at one point a heavy societal piece to this, yes. So I got one sentence left and I'm done. So at some point, when they asked for those equal rights, that's also when they went into the workforce, which meant that they had to learn about all of these other things. And not my words, not my feelings, but the thought there was, then they'll be qualified to make those decisions.
So if you prevent women from going to schools as long as men do, they will be dumber. Okay. Now, what's kind of funny that happened to bring women into the workforce was World War II. We were under attack, and we sent all of our men overseas. And at the same time, we also had to ramp up our factories. And so what happened? We went with the available workforce that was there, and we went with women. Women did a great job working in factories. They did as good of a job as men. And then all the men came back, and they took their jobs back, and women were out of work. But it was kind of established that women could do the work of men. And so they started entering the workforce because it was finally shown that they actually weren't dumb. And then of course, they started going to school after what I think women stopped going to school after like 6th grade or 8th grade before. So yeah, they were dumb. And now they start going to school all the time, for the full time that men did. And lo and behold, it's determined now that women do have the same abilities to do most jobs as men. But
some jobs.
I want to, well, not all men have the capability of doing some jobs either. For example, I would be terrible at any job that involves jumping out of airplanes. I'm afraid of heights. And I'm sure that there are women that could do that job a lot easier than me. And I would suggest that just about every job out there, there's a woman that could be trained, just like a man could be trained, and they would be able to do the job sufficiently.
There's desire that falls into that as well, though, because women could do the job of a plumber, an electrician, an oil rig worker. They can do all those things, right? If they're supposedly equal, they choose not to.
Oh, wait a minute. I want to dig into that. They choose not to. Remember why they would choose not to. Okay, our society enforces certain social norms that are largely unwritten, but in the case of this presidential order, it's written. And if you want to prevent a woman from doing a job, most women, you simply just make it not okay, just socially. And so I'm suggesting that we have a problem socially with allowing women to do certain things. And so if they go into those jobs, it's going to be 10 times harder. Like Think Tank said earlier, the whole distraction thing. Why would you have a woman plumber if men get distracted once their shirts get wet, and now they're wearing a wet T-shirt while they're being a plumber? That would distract those men.
I don't think so. There's not a lot of females that I know that would volunteer to go do those kinds of jobs.
Oh my God, I know a number of them.
I've not had the same experience.
Maybe it's our social circles then.
You do live in a very interesting state, yes. However, what I've found, at least here in the Midwest, is that females tend to go for the creative jobs. And that is where they tend to reside. And I don't know if it's because of society. I don't know. That's just what they like. They like doing that kind of stuff. People will do what they like to do. And obviously something that pays them well enough. Except you have people that are dying to be social workers and they get paid next to nothing. People that want to be teachers get paid next to nothing. But a lot of those people are backing out of those careers now. And there's shortages in a lot of these because nobody wants to do that anymore. A lot of that is society, yes. But that boils down to choice, not a presidential executive order.
The executive order is certainly written to influence social structure.
I don't know if I agree with you with that.
Gender, ideology, extremism. Tell me if those words are meant to be scientifically oriented or if they're meant to play on your emotions.
They're meant to stop all of the nonsense of 27 different genders. 10 more come out every 3 years.
So what?
And it's impossible to determine anymore where they are. Who
cares? Why do I need to know what's down my neighbor's pants? Why?
What's in their DNA? Because why
do I need to know what's in their DNA? So it's even better. That's an incredible invasion of privacy.
What do you mean an incredible invasion of privacy?
I don't like to share my name and social security number together because that's an invasion of privacy. Somebody could take advantage of that. If I shared my DNA, certain select things about my DNA, that is even worse.
You already did. You did 23andMe.
Why should I need to? No. That's a private company. That's a private company. That's different.
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole nother show in itself.
Well, that's a whole other show. But what I'm getting at, and I'm trying to stay on the subject that why does it matter that anyone should care about whether you're a woman or a man? Because you could be a woman, take hormone supplements, and grow a beard. Okay, who cares? Why does it matter?
We've been down that road because of your genetic ability and your skill set, and if you're qualified to do something that might require to have fantastic knees and not be wondering if your ACL is going to tear.
Wait a minute. You just said earlier that, and I agreed, that women and men have the same rights in the United States. So wait. So if we have the same rights in the United States, why can't a woman with better knees than me get the job?
She can. That's where a lot of people fail, like in their thinking. Just because you have the right to apply for something doesn't guarantee an outcome. And a lot of people get that wrong. A whole lot of people get that wrong. Just because you have the equal right, you don't have a guarantee associated with that.
I think that's pulling it a bit further than I'm getting at. I would like to suggest that there is no job in the United States, if you were qualified, that a woman could not get. There's no job for a man in the United States that a man is qualified that a qualified woman could not get. Now, if you make the qualifications based upon your DNA, well, that's not equal rights.
Well, let me give you a better example. You have your resume, and you are highly qualified in a variety of coding things. Why don't you have 35 companies begging for your services?
Right now, coding is a bit AI is threatening my job. But
do you see my point though?
Manpower.
It's their choice on who's going to hire you, and there's a lot of other factors that go into that, not just what's on a piece of paper. It helps what you have on a piece of paper.
Are you defending the right of an employer to pick a man over a woman for a programming job?
You should be able to pick whoever you want to pick.
Well, that wouldn't. If you agree that, okay, I see how you're seeing this, and I'm asserting it in a different way. I'm saying that a man and a woman with equal ability should be able to get the job. And it sounds like you're saying
they should be. Yes.
And you're saying, I think, that a smarter woman in my skill set should get the job. Right?
No, there's a lot that goes into that. There's the social aspect of it. You have to be able to fit in with that company. And if you have two equal candidates on paper that have this, I know it'll never be exact, very, very close.
Let's just, we're talking conceptual, so right. You can make it exact.
No, I didn't want you to holler at me for that.
Well, I'm going to holler at you about sex and gender, not about...
Okay. So you have people that are equal on paper, but one's a stick in the mud and one has a fantastic personality. One doesn't have customer service skills. The ability to talk is an introvert and can't get over communicating with people and teams and everything as well. And the other does. It doesn't matter who's male or female. I'm going to choose the one that fits best for the role that I'm putting them in.
I agree with that. Let's go back a step. You have 50% women resumes and 50% men resumes. Let's just say two of each sitting on your desk before you interview them. before you look at the resume, do you throw out anybody's resume based on their gender?
No.
No. Okay. So that to me is me saying you're fine with either one of them in the job. That's what I'm getting to. Yeah. I totally agree with you. If you have a woman that's a busybody and doesn't work well with others, don't hire her. Hire the man instead, the one that's not a busybody. Okay. But if you're throwing out her resume based on her sex, that's a problem.
No.
Now,
I don't do that. But in society does do that.
Yes, they do.
And so, again, that's a whole nother show. But primarily, unfortunately, still in the U.S., women are generally the caregivers for the children. So if she's in her birthing years, the math will show you even that they miss more work because they're the caregivers to the child. They will have more sick days because their children will likely get them sick because they're the caregivers. So when some employers will look at that, and then there's maternity leave and everything else, some employers will look at that and go, you know what? We don't have to deal with that if we hire men.
So if they did, they would get prosecuted because that's against the law.
Well, there's a million ways to get around it, and everybody does it. Almost every company that I've ever been with.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure there's that's being done. Is that wrong? Absolutely.
Okay,
however, it happens.
Okay, I'm trying to get to the root of the problem, and I'm sure you have your opinions for your reason, and me disagreeing with them doesn't really help. But I want to get the idea across that they both ideally are fine.
Yeah.
It's that you're not going to hire or fire based upon that. You're not going to go around the rules. But we had to have those rules to make sure that women were respected and so on. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, okay, I'll keep going on this. I have Think Tank here. He said they should absolutely care about the social stuff. Look at what's being attacked lately. The identity of America and what being an American is, what we stand for, values and family values. Now it happens to be that in the past, the United States has been where women have the babies, they take care of the babies, and the men go out and earn the money. That's become a bit problematic lately as our economy has kind of required men and women to work. And COVID's making it very obvious that women paying for childcare is not it's expensive. And so it's easier in a way to have the women take care of the baby. And it's not in our social construct right now to have the woman work and the man take care of the baby. They'll say, well, women have boobs and that's how they feed the baby. Well, men can feed the baby in other ways. You could pump or you could buy baby formula. So there are ways around it, but our society, I don't think, has adapted well to women in the workforce. So even though ideally now they can vote, they can also work. Now, ideally that's the case. We don't like that. And as a result, we make things like this Trump executive order to establish the social order to say, okay, we actually do care about women, whether you're a woman or a man. And so we don't want you changing it on our documentation because it's official documentation. And that official documentation is going to care if you're an actual man or a woman.
Well, it does factor into health insurance premiums and everything else. If I was a man and I said, if I identified myself as a man, I could just answer the same questions. Have you ever had a baby? Yes. Have you ever given birth to a baby? It doesn't matter who you ask. You can use the same questions for everybody. In fact, I see those when I go get medical treatment. I'm asked, have I had any problems menstruating? I just say not applicable. And then I move on to the next one. In fact, I'm rather happy because it gets the form done faster. So you can answer the same question. You can have the same questions for everybody.
and still qualify or not qualify for certain programs. It might be that a program helps women who have helps people who've had babies, who've given birth, and it doesn't matter who you are, you deserve it if you've given birth, and that's who it's intended to help. But when you say it has to be a woman, you're making an artificial line that I think is not necessary. Yeah, I get the biological truth part. And I think we'd have a whole other episode about how people don't like to be lied to about whether a person's a man or a woman. But what I'm saying is, why does it matter? And I really haven't heard much more than you making some sort of claims that women are just better in some roles and men are in others. But women were better in raising children in the 1910s than men because they weren't allowed to have an education like men had. The society didn't allow them to do the same things. And if society did, even now, if they allowed women to do the same things, it would be a different ballgame.
They do allow it.
Society, no, you just it guarantee it says that you're guaranteed, but socially we don't allow it. Socially, it's very easy to fall into traditional gender stereotypes.
There is a lot of that, yeah. There is.
And
I don't know how to solve that problem.
Me neither. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Okay, this presidential order, and I'm starting to wrap up here because I know we've gone a bit long. This presidential order, its whole intention was to remove 3 executive orders that Biden put honoring people that they are allowed to use different gender markers, and then provide a framework for going forward. I don't think the framework's the best, but it can be understood that they want to provide a new framework. What's going to happen with the next president, if it's a Democrat, honestly, they're going to repeal this one. And we're going to go back and forth and back and forth. And it's really society that's determining these things, and the government needs to get out of determining what's okay socially for the United States.
Well, the executive order only mandates that for the federal government. It doesn't mandate it for every private company out there.
It doesn't mandate it for the states yet.
No.
So here's an example.
More private company, just for the federal government.
Right.
So again, why does it matter? Well, for whatever reason he wanted it that way, it is. But it doesn't affect you and me out here on the street.
It will actually. So what if? Okay, so if I can be identified as a female on my Oregon driver's license, yet my passport would identify me as a male, could you see a problem with my documentation disagreeing with each other?
Well, of course, because you shouldn't have to have that problem in the first place.
Wait a minute. But you do have the problem if the states are allowed to think one way and the government is allowed to think another way, right? It shouldn't be a problem. You just said it doesn't hurt anybody. But what if I wanted a student loan from the federal government? You know what they're going to ask for? My social security card and maybe my driver's license or something like that. Once they find a discrepancy between the two, a few things are going to happen. One, they're going to have a problem with it due to them mismatching. It's going to look fake. And then they're going to require additional information. And then if the United States government says, literally in this executive order, we recognize women this way and men another way, then they would easily say, you're not allowed to get this grant or this school loan or whatever.
Yeah. So again, it's a moot point. If you're not delusional and go to your state government and tell them you're a female when you're not, you won't have that problem.
Wait, you just said it was okay. You said, look, they're not mandating things for the state. You're perfectly fine by saying with the state of Oregon that you're a female.
You did that to yourself.
Well, no. You said it's okay. They're not telling the states what to do. But what they're really doing is they're setting up an artificial delusion where if the federal government will interpret something one way, your state will interpret another way. Fuck you. You're screwed unless you do what the federal government says, right?
No, you're not. If
You're delusional.
You're delusional if you go and put on a state document the sex or gender or whatever you want to call it that you're not. That's on you, not on the state, not on the federal government.
Yeah, because the state says it's okay, but wait a minute, you're saying it's delusional.
Yes.
Let's get away from the interpretations, like our own interpretations. I'm just talking about law, because when you said you're perfectly free to do this with the state, and you're
consequences though.
Okay, so what you're really saying is that the federal government says this, that the states need to fall in line, or else there will be consequences for individuals.
No,
there will be consequences. You just said there will be consequences.
There will be personal consequences for that. If you choose,
there'll be social consequences.
If you choose to do that, you'll create problems for yourself.
With the federal government?
No.
Yeah.
With travel or anything else.
So here's an example of where the federal government and states have disagreed. Marijuana. Okay. The states were perfectly fine in legalizing marijuana. There's a case in California like 10 years ago where a marijuana farm was raided by the federal government because the federal government said that's illegal. And the state said, no, it's not. And now you set up a situation where I believe what happened was the government of California threatened to send the National Guard to protect this marijuana field. And the federal government decided to kind of back off because now you have states fighting the government. And, you don't want FBI agents fighting, National Guard. But then you have a big problem there. So I agree. It's delusional if you would expect those two things to coexist, and you're making it sound like it's okay if they coexist. But I'm delusional for doing those things. And I'm saying it's not about my want or desire. If the laws don't match up, you're gonna have problems, and much more than personal. You have a literal process problem with the states and the government. That means it doesn't work.
No, that means you didn't tell the truth to the state.
Okay, you said it was also okay for the you said it was also okay for the for you to have an abortion in one state, but the federal government does not recognize it for others. And so if the federal government recognizes it's illegal and they try to stop something, you set up a similar situation. There's no truth issue with marijuana. There's no truth issue with abortion, but the same things happen.
So by giving the powers back to the states, you got to understand how that works. The federal government manipulates the states with money. And they'll say to the states, because we had this happen in Ohio with the speed limits. A lot of these other states, 75, 80 miles an hour is legal. And the federal government said, no, we recognize 65 miles an hour on your maximum, or 70 or whatever it was. And they said, you can choose to go ahead and raise that speed limit to 85 if you want, but we're not going to give you any federal funds for the highway then. Well, that was a little bit too much pressure because they rely on that money. The states aren't used to being self-reliant anymore. They've grown accustomed to daddy federal government handing them all this money. And so that's where your conflict of interest is. That's how the federal government puts mandates onto states, is they just withhold funding.
So the federal...
Well, almost done.
Oh, go ahead.
That's exactly what they did with the abortion thing that you mentioned, is they said, it's up to you, but we're not paying for any of it. If you choose to allow abortion in your state, you have to pay for it. That's all they did.
So when you're talking about consequences like that, now you have consequences for a state for allowing people to do something differently than the feds want. Now, traditionally, the feds have paid for things that they want because it's a way to get them done. If the Fed said, we'd like to build a new superhighway, but this time in the air, and it's going to cost such and such amount of money to get this done. Okay. The federal government has found that if they pay for it, they get it done. That's what they did with the Interstate Highway Act in the 1950s. They were able to get an interstate made all the way across the United States. It was great for interstate commerce. The economy improved and so on. And if they had relied upon each of the states to pay for it themselves, that would have been a problem because some states are poorer than others and they would have buckled. They would have not been able to afford it, and then they would have been in violation of law. And then I don't know what happens when a state's in violation of law. They, I don't know, they disincorporate. Who knows? But the point is, then you have a crisis where a state can't get it done. So I get it. You don't want the states to rely upon the federal tit for money. But at the same time, these states aren't actually independent. And this is something that conservatives really like to beat down. They say, you can, if it's the law in your state, if you want to be able to change your gender marker, you can. If you want to have an abortion, you can. If you want to grow marijuana in this state, you can. That is until the federal government comes along and says, there's conditions on this money, just like what Trump did to California just now with the fires. He said, if you don't do what I want, we will not give you money to battle your fires. Well, that's shooting yourself in the foot. That's like you having, it's like, okay, so if California suffers in its economy due to people leaving or due to, so many people dead or no more houses, that's no more taxes and so on, it's going to hurt the United States.
If they ran their state to where it attracted people to live there, they'd have plenty of tax money. They're running their state, which is driving people away. That should be clue number one that there's a problem.
This is a bit of a conflict now because now who is telling who what to do? It sounds like the federal government is acting as a big daddy and enforcing its will. And you're telling me you seem to like that concept when you have told me time and time again how the states need to be a lot more independent.
I don't like the concept. I think there's a disconnect somewhere. I don't think the federal government should tell anybody anything. What I'm saying is that these states have to take accountability for themselves, and they don't want to do that. Some of them can't do that because they've grown accustomed to feeding off of the government. Yes. Well, so there is a huge conflict of interest there. If these states were independent enough to support themselves, there would be no conflict at all. They could tell the federal government, I don't care. It's the same as a human being going to work every day, working 40 hours a week until you're 90 years old. You have to, because you haven't found enough money to support yourself with. So you have to play by those rules. So if the state finds those resources and attracts people there, then it works out fantastically, and the federal government has no power.
That work comparison, I actually want to do in another show, maybe a regular Faz Radio, because Sam Altman, the creator of OpenAI or the CEO of OpenAI, has said, due to AI being able to do everybody's job, we might have to start rethinking the social contract in the world, and that contract being that everybody must work for a living. And that I think that would be great for an entire show. But I do think I've teased out of you an agreement that the federal government shouldn't tell people what to do. As regarding anything, the states should.
I don't think the states should either. See, I'm very other way with that. I do think there should be some basic tenets put in place for people, because we do have a wide variety of people, and we don't want people to be able to hurt other people or take advantage of other people. So basic tenets, yes. When it comes to making decisions for yourself, like any of them, any of the big ones, even this gender thing. I'm not so sure that they should go beyond the basics, which is what they did. And they said for the federal government, we're defining it this way. And they didn't push it to the states. They're at this point, they're not threatening states with anything. They're not threatening people. They're not threatening private companies. So it's not really a big deal. And it doesn't really affect you or me or anybody else because we don't have federal jobs.
Well, it's both of us watch crypto, and both of us see news about our cryptos, and we make determinations and predictions based upon that. And the determination and prediction I get about this executive order is that it's very similar to the marijuana debate, which is ending, by the way. Now the federal government, I think, is backed off of that. But and the abortion debate, which I don't think the federal government is going to back off. It really depends on who's in charge. And anything else where the feds and the states disagree, they're setting up situations for conflict that are unnecessary. If you feel your birth certificate is issued by your state, and the federal government, especially with a passport, its whole job with a passport is to verify who you are. And if your state defines who you are, then the federal government, in my opinion, should trust the state as to what the state feels is the right amount of information.
It passport doesn't identify who you are. A passport assures whoever you present it to that you're a citizen of America. It has nothing to do with anything else.
Well, it's okay. I just got a passport recently, and I can tell you that there is far more security things on it than I have ever seen on any other piece of government issued anything, more than the dollar. There's all sorts of little security threads and micro printing. I mean, part of it is your picture is made up of your name in colored patterns and stuff like that. There's so many security features on it that I cannot think of a purpose other than guaranteeing that you are who you say you are and this person is a citizen.
That's because of the stupid terrorism stuff that they have going on. So they incorporated that into that program, yes.
Okay.
But they are two entirely separate things. A passport's purpose is to say that you are a U.S. citizen. You can use it now because of all their data collection as proof of ID, just like they put the real ID tag on state driver's licenses, because they want to make sure that when you get on an airplane or you're identifying yourself in a program that's regulated by the federal government, that you are who you say you are. It's not the purpose of it, though. And I think all that data collection, it is a little bit too much. And I think that the ability for them to identify you that deeply at that level isn't the greatest thing in the world either.
It's scary. And I would say there's a whole, I would agree that there's a whole lot of identification that's not necessary. It's kind of funny how, we have a Faz Radio Discord, and we talk about a lot of interesting subjects, and I don't know what 99% of the people in that Discord look like. I don't care about their names, their real names. I know that Think Tank is Think Tank, and Old Man Smithers is Old Man Smithers. I don't remember. I think I heard his name at one time, but I don't know his real name. I don't really care because he's a personality. Old Man Smithers could be a woman. Don't care. And I think the absolute kind of freedom that people are after in the United States is that anybody can be anything that they want. And I want to wrap this up, but I do get a sense that both you and I agree that the government should not be telling people socially what to do. And I think tying what they feel is biological into how we treat each other is not going to end well. I think it's just gonna bounce. It's gonna get undone. It's gonna cause a lot of chaos for a while, and then it'll get reversed. There's too much other law that they will have to dismantle, bit by bit, to make that go away.
Again, they're not pushing it on anybody but except for federal employees. So it's a moot point.
Oh, no. Federal identification too. No, not just federal employees, federal identification. Federal loans, Social Security, all sorts of benefits that you deserve, you paid into.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't lie to the
problem.
government about your sex, and you have nothing to worry about.
Lie. This is not even a lie thing. This doesn't even matter. If you paid into an insurance plan, which is Social Security, you deserve to get money back. What was guaranteed to you? Period.
No, not necessarily, because women tend to live longer than men, which means the government's on the hook for more money.
Since
So
that's a protected status,
there's a financial difference.
If women live longer than men, think about that. They'd be working longer than men too. When you say they'll collect more Social Security, what you're doing is you're throwing in there an assumption that they will retire at the same time and that they will live on the government's dime longer. But it's not. They will work. People work because they need the money. Social Security doesn't pay them as much money as they would get working. So they're going to work longer because they need the money. That's how capitalism works.
But you can still work and collect Social Security. It's not one or the other.
You can, but if you think that it's a way to make more money than a man would in that situation, you're going to have problems.
The government pays out more to females than they do to men.
That's okay.
It's not. That's why they want truth.
It's okay because of how they give. If you're working, you're actually contributing to the economy.
I'm not sure. I'm talking about
a man just living on the dole. A man just living on the dole. He's being propped up by the government, right?
Propped up by the government.
Well, yeah.
I really I'm lost again. I'm not sure where you're going with that.
So
rephrase, counselor.
I don't see a problem with women collecting Social Security for longer if they're working.
I don't care if they do either. My point I'm trying to make is that when you pay into Social Security, you pay whether you're a man or a woman. It depends on how much you earn is what is contributed to that Social Security.
Depends on how much you earn, exactly.
Okay. And what happens is that if you're a married couple, you get your choice when your husband dies as a woman, whether you want your Social Security or you want to keep the portion of his that you're allocated, whatever. And obviously,
sounds
you're going to
fair.
pick whatever's
Sounds
higher.
fair.
Okay. So with that being known, men tend to live less than women do. So the government's obligation to pay out on that Social Security number is going to be higher if you're female. So there's a financial piece that focuses in on that when you declare to the government whether you're male or female.
Somebody worked for that money. This when you're talking about an insurance program, you're saying if you pay in X, you said it yourself, you pay in X, you will get Y back, and that depends upon a calculation. Okay. That allocation will any man, if they live till age 105, would be getting that allocation if they retired at 65. Okay. If you then say, hey, whatever, lady, you could take your Social Security, or you could just take what he worked for. They're actually getting back any rights that she had. They're not paying out two anymore. They're just paying out the rest of the man's share that would have been paid to him anyway.
But they have to pay it for longer.
Why should that matter? It's an insurance program. He paid into it. He gets it for as long as him or his wife lives. That's how the program is designed.
Yeah, well, that's
Change
a
the
whole nother show
change
too,
the
because that doesn't work out. The math
change
doesn't work
change
on
the
the board.
percentage, change the algorithm if
But
you
that's
have a beef.
I'm trying to just explain to you that's part of why they care.
Oh, I don't think that it's official anywhere that they care if you're a woman as far as insurance payouts. I think that they do metrics on finding how long women live, but I don't. Having an official policy like that again would be a violation of law, and that's what that. See, when you say they care, I think you're talking about under the table. Do they care? Just like under the table, do they care if you're a woman when you get hired in a job?
They care because they need to know how much they can steal out of that trust fund.
All right then. Okay, so this is you're getting into another area that we agree on. It sounds like you're giving a lot of props to things that aren't official, and I'm trying to just go by the rules that are written.
It's reality. It's the way things work. There's
So-
a difference between rules on paper and reality.
I would say that would be the same when you're talking about gender.